call this regular meeting of the City Council for Tuesday, February 14, 2012 to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have a roll call. Patrick Green. Here. Good start, huh? Scott Stevens.
Present.
Keith Sadowski. Here. Robert Bacamino.
Here.
Kelly Collegio.
Here.
Stephen Warner.
Here.
Cecil St. Pierre. Here. Adoption, Mr. Secretary.
Item 4, adoption of the consent agenda.
So moved. Motion by Green, support by Sadowski.
Mr. President?
Discussion, Ms. Collegio.
Yes, I'd like to remove, here I go. I'd like to remove item 4U and put it on the agenda, please. For you. I believe that's what it is. Yep.
Ms. Collegio, you know that's just to set a public hearing date, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
very good.
Yeah, I do, but thank you.
Any further? Mr. Secretary, where would that be on the agenda? Well, we'll take that up on the next item. In regards to the motion, Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Ms. Collegio?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, yes. Item passes. Next item.
Item 5, adoption of the agenda.
Is there any motion?
So moved.
Motion by Green, support by Bacamino.
Mr. President?
Discussion, Ms. Collegio.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that when we have our minutes that the people that are present, we try to get them all. I know at the last meeting, and even if you read in the minutes, that Commissioner Green, I'd like to make sure he's added as being here, at the last meeting. In the minutes, he's quoted as speaking, as well as Donna Dordeski, the acting city engineer, and Mr. Gamble, if I could, we can add that to the minutes.
Yeah, we'll do that on item 6. We're still on 5.
Oh, am I on the wrong thing?
Sorry.
So sorry, never mind me. There goes the pledge, and there goes I.
I know, we're
Let's
starting.
start all over. Here we go.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Stevens,
we have a number of
don't feel good.
we have a number of items. Ms. Collegio has asked to add an item to the agenda, and that will become 16B. It's a request for noxious amendment to the noxious weeds ordinance. The Deputy Public Service Director has requested to remove item 10. That situation has been taken care of. And we would like to add item 9A, receipt of certificate of achievement for government transparency.
How about if we make that 10? We don't have to change the order.
That's a good catch. We'll make that item 10.
And the consent
And
agenda?
then the consent agenda, that item 4U will become 12N.
Any further discussion of the regards to adoption of the agenda? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 6, Mr. Secretary.
Item number 6, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 24th, 2012.
So moved.
Motion by Warner.
Mr. President, if I could.
Support by
Yeah,
Mr. Bacamino. Discussion, Ms. Collegio.
Okay, yeah, once again, I'd just like to add to the minutes that Commissioner Green was also present at the meeting, Acting City Engineer Donna Dordeski, and Neighborhood Services Coordinator Bill Gamble, as well as, just because it was an item on page 19, 18 and 19 that I had voted no on, I just wanted to make sure that basically the reason that I had spoken, voted no, was left out of the minutes, so I'd just like to add them back into the minutes if I could. I watched the tape again tonight, and I had said, if we're going into budget, $250,000 is a lot of money. I wish this would have come up after budget, and that would have been, let's see, let me get to that page. Page 19, right after the first paragraph, right after general fund at all, if I could just add that. Just in case anybody ever goes back and, it just looks like I voted no for.
Is that
No reason.
amendment acceptable to Mr. Werner and Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Yes.
That become part of the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Item number 7, Mr. Secretary.
Item 7, approval of the bills.
Motions.
Motion to approve the bills.
Motion by Sadowski, support by Green. Discussion.
Mr. President.
Ms. Colegio.
Mr. Malzek, thank you for being here tonight. I have a quick question for you. On page 16 of the bills, check number 515322 and 515325, we have Anderson Eckstein, local street repair expenditures, surveying services, $15,515.70. And Hubble, Roth and Clark Incorporated, local street repair expenditure surveying services. I know we have all the street repairs coming out. Maybe I'm just not understanding the way this is done, but I don't remember this ever coming before council. I'm not sure if it's just a fund that's set to the side for like professional services or how they're chosen. And if you could explain that for me, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Good evening, council. Both those vendors are under contract by the city. It went out for bid a few years back, and they're under contract through 2012. And so this is the engineering department employed these two vendors to do preliminary surveying work in 2 different areas in the city, one being on Warner Street between 13 and Common, and the other one being 3 places, Reed Street and 13 Mile Road to the north end, Nordic Circle, Reed to Reed, and Buchanan, Reed to Blair. So these are the preliminary surveying work that's being done for the road millage that was passed back in November by the people.
Okay, and do you know how long this, how long they have the contract for? Up in?
Through
when?
2012.
All the way through the year? Okay, all right. All right, thank you. That was my question.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, council? I have one. Mr. Melzik, I'm looking at page 3. Am I looking at page 3? 131. Check number 515423, the Broadspire A. Crawford Lost Fund Reimbursement. We're paying $131,372.21. Can you explain that?
Right. That's just normal insurance payments that we made to Broadspire. Broadspire is where we have all of our general insurance through, and it is just a normal monthly payment that we make.
All right, that's what when I just saw lost fund reimbursement, I thought it may mean something else. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Sadowski.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Warner.
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino.
Yes.
Ms. Colegio.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre. Yes. Item 8.
Item 8, approval of building authority checks, meeting of February 7th, 2012.
Motion to approve. Support.
Motion by Green, support by Warner. Any discussion? Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Warner.
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
No.
Ms. Colegio.
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino.
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre. Yes. Item number 9.
Item 9, announcements. Mr. Chair,
Mr. Stevens.
if I may, for the audience in-house and the residents at home, I wanted to let you know that last week we had a closed session, Committee of the Whole, and at that it was the security and safety of the residents at the council meetings was discussed. There was a number of items that were decided and recommended by the police department. And as the experts, we are obligated, and rightfully so, to take their suggestions and to put them into place. And as such, one of those suggestions is that nobody is allowed on stage at the council meetings unless they are for your own safety and for order in the auditorium, and that unless there is a meeting going on in conference room A, no one from the general public is allowed in that conference room either. So that's the announcement that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Any other announcements? Mr. Sadowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have two announcements today. Councilman, or Council Secretary Stevens had made a suggestion. We'd like to have, for the opening of the Pledge of Allegiance, to have local Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops, Brownies and Cub Scout troops. If you'd like to recite the Pledge of Allegiance or lead council in the Pledge of Allegiance, would you contact me so I can go ahead and set that up? Just need, if you want to bring the whole troop or 3 or 4 people, that would be great. We think it'd be a great addition to have these new leaders in the city of Warren come to do that. So please contact me. My number's on TV. It's on the internet. It's 586-216-6377. So thank you. Also, with Lent just around the corner, my church, St. Sylvester's, will be doing a fish fry. We do it every Friday. Food's absolutely fantastic. We'll also be having one on Ash Wednesday, so come on out. They usually start, I want to say about 3 or 4 o'clock or so. They'll have a big placard out on 12 Mile. So it's one of the oldest fish fries in the city of Warren, so they're really good at it, obviously. So come on out, again, starting Ash Wednesday and then every Friday all the way through Lent. Thank you.
Mr. Bacamino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple announcements, real short, though. I want to thank everybody for putting on, especially Denise from Parks and Rec and Mr. Bowman, for the daddy-daughter dance that was held this week. I know Mr. Warner was out there cutting a rug with his daughter, and it was a lot of fun. It was good to see a lot of fathers and their daughters and grandfathers and uncles and all kinds of male role models for their daughters to be out there showing them how to be treated with respect and courtesy and flowers and the whole 9 yards. So thank you again to the Parks and Rec Department. And the other thing I wanted to remind people is I think our next council meeting will be on Election Day. Is that correct? February 28th. But, so it'd be kind of silly to remind you to go out and vote on the 28th next council meeting because it'll be over by 8 o'clock. But I want to remind people that it's an American right. I just had the privilege of being at a sort of, I call it a District 5 rivalry. Lincoln High School was challenging the Centerline Panthers today, and it was a very close game. Everybody played well, and at the end they shook hands and good sportsmanship. But a gentleman, a student, a young man opened the door, telling Commissioner Galasso for the young ladies. And, it reminded me of that daddy-daughter dance thing. We're teaching our children every day how we behave. And I asked the young man, I said, well, why'd you open that door? He said, well, because, my mom taught me to open the door for ladies. But he also said he was graduating this year and going into the United States Marines. And it kind of touched me that, here we are, America, this young man did that, and he's going in the Marines serving our country, and in 2 weeks we're going to be voting. There's local elections, there's primary elections, and a lot of people, I always see the polls, sometimes you don't even get in double digits. So I'm putting the call out today. I'd like to see Warren in the next 2 weeks get out, get educated, whatever issues on the ballot. If you're a registered voter, get out and vote on the 28th. I'd like to see Warren as the #1 city. Have the most people get out and vote in Macomb County this year. I know it's important. This young man who's going to risk his life, and I know some audience members I wish you would show her some respect, young man. Maybe you should think about joining the military yourself, because I'm talking about a very serious topic. Thank you. This young man's going to risk his life so we can have voters. I'm asking people to get out there and vote. I know it is one of the reasons why young men and women serve our country in the military. So I do appreciate that, especially at this time of year. The 28th is that day, so mark it on your calendar. You have 2 weeks to educate yourself on the issues. However you vote is up to you, but I would like to see Warren lead the way in Macomb County, have the most voters out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that chivalry is not dead. Any other announcements?
One other.
Go ahead,
if I
Mr.
may.
Stevens.
I just wanted to wish my my lovely wife, Kathy, at home, a happy Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Mr. Manette, I have an announcement, and I'm going to have you come here and be part of the announcement that I have. I have heard that the water meters are going in, and that it is necessary that all water meters be installed in order for the program to be successful. And I've also heard and been told that if you don't put the water meter in, your water's going to be shut off, and maybe you can confirm that. And maybe, I thought it'd be a good idea just to remind people the process, what the person looks like, so nobody tries to pull any maneuvers on Warren residents in regards to posing as water meter installers. Do they have credentials or anything like that? And hopefully you can provide a little of that information. Back to the original question, I know that's really not your particular area, so I appreciate you taking the time to stand before us to answer the question. But is that true that if your water meter is not installed, your water will be shut off?
Yeah, that's the policy established by the water. It is in my program. But,
I know,
but I do have some
we're not going to
knowledge.
kill the messenger, okay? So number one, I appreciate that, so that everybody knows. And as you indicated to me earlier, that if everybody doesn't have their water meter installed, the program will not be successful.
Correct, correct.
Secondly, do you know anything in regards to people installing the water meters?
Yeah, everybody who's going to get a water meter installed should receive something in the mail in advance of that happening. And in that mailer, it will describe the person that will be coming to their home, the credentials that they should have, as well as the uniform that they should be wearing.
All right, thank you. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that, maybe you can answer this, is that many people, water meters were estimated. That does happen, correct?
Correct.
And now that they're going to have a read off the water meter, it may be a little bit higher than, could be higher than usual, correct?
Well, potentially. I mean, some of the meters are 25 years old or 20 to 25 years old. And part of the reason we're replacing meters is due to underreporting. As they get older, they don't meter properly, and usually they meter less than what you're using.
All right, so there could be some sticker shock.
Possibly.
All right, and do you know if any provisions have been made in order for Warren residents to, pay off the sticker shock?
I wouldn't be familiar with that, no.
All right, and I haven't been informed, unless Mr. Melzak can tell us if he knows about what we're going to do in regards to collecting, thank you, Mr. Minette.
You're welcome.
I've spoken with Mr. Polakowski, and the fact is that there's been very few extra, big bills that you were concerned about. Some are estimated, and so that's why, there's some makeup for that. That's why very few people have had an increase in their water bills, to answer that first question.
But what if the situation arises? Is there anything in place to where they will not get hit with a late fee if they can't afford it?
Right. That's something that in talking to Mr. Polakowski's group, that you can work with the city on that.
All right, so they should contact the water department?
The water division, yep.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, what is the late fee for late water? Do we know?
I don't have it right here today with me. I apologize.
I just heard it is a pretty high rate, and I thought we would maybe discuss that at a later date too, and maybe Mr. Polakowski can make a presentation at the next council meeting so that people can be more fully informed. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And in conclusion, happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Next
Mr. Chair, just one last.
Mr. Green.
Continuing on what you just said, I had some conversation with a resident from District 1, and his water meter had just been replaced. Prior to the water meter being replaced, they do a final read on the existing meter and with the resident there to sign off on it. That's usually where you get, if it's been estimated for quite some time, where you get a sticker shock bill. And even so, it wasn't that much higher with this particular resident. And with several of the residents throughout District 1, they haven't seen a significant increase.
Wow.
But on those,
Glad to hear that.
what I wanted to continue on that, but what I wanted to say was that over the past couple of weeks, I've gotten several calls from residents, and I just wanted to thank, specifically Mr. Koss from the administration, from the water department, on taking those issues, contacting the residents, and taking care of everybody throughout District 1. Thank you.
Because I've received phone calls about it too, and I've also received phone calls in regards to late fees. You know, since you go to monthly, some people may have trouble paying for it. And so that maybe that's something we can discuss so that, because these are our residents, and we can hopefully resolve some of these issues so people don't get hit, because I've heard I don't even want to say the number because it sounds so high, but it could be, because I don't really know what the number is. So I'll make sure I know at the next council meeting, and hopefully we can have this matter resolved in some fashion.
Mr. President?
Ms. Collegio.
I myself have also received several calls from residents that had a little sticker shock with their water bill, and I'm in agreement with you that, you know, I think it would be good for us to sit down at some point in the near future and figure out some way, you know, for needy residents that if they do get that big sticker shock, we can, you know, make it as soft as possible and put something in place for them.
Yeah, because
So-
why hit them with a late fee if they can't pay for it? It only gets
Right,
worse.
and I don't know if announcement's the time to discuss that, but a committee of the whole would be, you know, something to discuss that with the water department, but I'm not sure where we could, you know, squeeze that in the meeting, so, thank you.
All right, thank you. In regards to any further announcements, we'll go to item number 10.
Item 10, receipt of certificate of achievement for government transparency.
Who wants the floor?
This is Mr. Robert C. Kittle from Unitrix.
Mr. Kittle, you have the floor.
Thank you very kindly, distinguished council members. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. I've been working with the staff of the great city of Warren, particularly Mr. Hartley and Mr. Melchick, for quite a while, since Rob came in day one, and Jim actually longer than that. We've been in all four corners of the state, crossing a lot of highways and a lot of open spaces, dealing with the transparency and back and forth to Lansing, working with Treasury and the different associations there. And we're very proud to have developed a relationship with your staff here, and I would like to commend you guys on the efforts that you're making relative to transparency in government. As you know, Unitrix is one of the transparency tools that's out there that is very aligned with the state's economic vitality incentive program requirements. And based on the amount of interaction and the excitement, the questions, the input that I've received from the folks in Warren, I'd like to present you with a certificate of achievement that we put together. And if I may, I'd like to read it into record. And it's the Certificate of Achievement for Government Transparency for the City of Warren. And in recognition of the leadership position the City of Warren has taken with regards to transparency in government, this certificate is awarded as an acknowledgement of its efforts, which exceeded the requirements set forth by the legislature of the state of Michigan, its Department of Treasury, and the Governor's Office, and written into law as part of Public Act 63 of 2011. While transparency in government is not a new concept and one that has been embraced by the City of Warren, its staff, and elected officials, place such a great emphasis on the quality and quantity of information made available to the public, the City of Warren is a transparency role model for local units of government. So congratulations on your achievement, all attributable to your team's hard work and dedication. Signed by me. It's a little wall trophy for you. But we actually started working with Jim Hartley, actually, with the help of Dave Berger and the team at SEMCOG well before I think Governor Snyder even decided to run for office. So transparency in government and responsible government were key phrases that were used here for some time. I can tell you stories from my journeys across the state. There's always a question as to if we're transparent enough, but from my perspective and what I've seen and witnessed, you guys are well above and deserve to be recognized. So for that, I thank you. We appreciate the relationship and look forward to enduring years together.
Thank you.
So if there's any questions I could answer for you, I'd be happy to. Otherwise, I'll
Who wants to collect it for the, is there a motion to receive and file this certificate of achievement for government transparency?
Motion to receive.
Motion by Green.
Support.
Support by Stevens. All in favor? Aye. No one's opposed, it passed unanimously. I appreciate the award. Thank you very much on behalf of all the people in the city of Warren. Item number 11, Mr. Secretary.
Item number 11 is a public hearing, determination of a nuisance at 11203 Hudson, vacant dilapidated one-story house with block crawl space, wood garage, front porch, posts, and miscellaneous debris, and consideration and adoption of a resolution.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward?
How you doing? I'm very familiar with this house. It's right down the street
Could
from
you
where
please state your name for the record?
James McDaniel. I live at 11051 Hudson. Y'all know who I am. I live right down the street from this particular house, and there's an individual that wants to try to purchase this through the bank. He's been trying to get in touch with them. This house can be saved. I know the old owner. He just built the back addition on it a couple of years ago. It's fresh, it's clean. I wish this council to table this for 90 days while this gentleman tries to purchase this home. It's only going to cost maybe $20,000 to $25,000 to $30,000 to finish this house, and it can go back on the tax roll as a taxable structure. And I feel at this time that just putting it on, taking it off the table for 90 days in the long run would be beneficial for the tax roll and the taxpayers in Michigan. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public? All right, we'll close the public hearing and bring it in regards to motions from the city council.
Motion to abate.
Motion by Green.
Support.
Support by Sadowski. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
if I may,
Mr. Stevens.
I'd like to have Mr. James weigh in on this, if he could.
Good evening, Council. Dean James. I have to agree with Mr. McDaniels. This house could be saved if someone was willing to spend that type of money to bring it back. I don't know if that can be done. We've tried numerous ways to contact owners or people that would have interest in this property, and no one's come forward. So I'm not really sure how well he's going to do at this. But as far as the house is concerned, it could be saved with the proper amount of funds and work.
In your estimation, approximately how much money are we talking about?
Without doing a complete inspection on the interior, I'd have to say he's pretty close, probably closer to the 30,000. That's just a guess, you know.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is there any way to ever get into the homes without some type of permission? Other than just
unless
opening the
they're
door,
if they're
walking
open,
in? I mean, as far as legalities are concerned, do you have access, or could you get access?
I believe not, but I refer to the attorney on that one.
Yeah, warrant.
It's still a private property, and we're
No,
not-
I understand it's private property, but that has a lot to do in regards to our decision-making process. Because if it's been leaking, you know, the inside, how much work it's going to have, and we just don't have that information in front of us, and it seems to be valuable. And the person who does want to save it didn't bother to come here tonight. And so, I mean, I guess that's something that council has to weigh in on. And maybe we can just hear from Judge Biernat. As a general rule, we're not supposed to go into private property as a general rule. Is there any way for an inspector to get in a house in a situation like this?
They can demonstrate an exigent circumstance where public safety, health, or welfare is involved. I believe we could take steps to enter the home.
Oh, so it would be the
Under
exigent
order.
circumstances exception to the Fourth Amendment.
That's correct.
I know that very well. Took that to the Court of Appeals. Would you, if exigent circumstances may appear in this situation, maybe we, in regards to possible tabling, that you could, you know, in order to save this house and to know the extent of the damage and for the health and welfare of the neighborhood, maybe you could take a look at the inside. I'm just offering that as a solution to this city council, and because I don't know about 90 days. You know, that's a long time that things may rot even more, and who knows, absent knowing what's going on inside. So in regards to that, I'll leave that to city council for its consideration. Any further discussion, Mr. Bacamino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. James, under the current condition, obviously, is it a threat or hazard to the community for that? If we did go 90 days, would it be?
I wouldn't recommend it. I would, 30 days would be about the max that I would go on something like that. Based that it's been vacant for a year, and we've made tried to make multiple contacts with owners, banks. No one has any interest. I'm not sure that spending that type of money on that home, I really wouldn't want to say that, because we're all about saving homes. So.
Absolutely, and that was I was going to put my next question or whatever, but the assessments.
Without go ahead, I'm sorry.
I know, a lot of times, council, we've had discussions about the NSP monies being used, and a lot of times we spend more money than a house is worth to save it.
Yes.
But that helps stabilize the neighborhood, hence NSP, Neighborhood Stabilization Program. And I think in a lot of times, in certain areas of the city, you're going to have to invest a lot of money with very little yield. In other words, a $30,000 investment might not get you back. If you try to sell it $30,000, you might even lose money in some areas. I don't know if this is the particular case. That's why that federal program is important, and I do vote always to spend that federal money in Michigan, in Warren, in hopefully areas that need it. Will the private community invest $30,000 to $40,000 to fix a home? It isn't material. It isn't happening right now. The economy is such it's not happening. So, is this home a candidate for NSP money, or has it been ever targeted for that, so that we could possibly? Can we even use NSP money for private homes that we can't find the owners for? It won't show up for show cause hearings and things like that.
I'd have to discuss that with Rose Furlong, because they dedicate the areas, or she ultimately knows the areas that these funds can be spent. This house was started, they started a remodel on it. They probably put about $15,000 into it with some foundation, some exterior roof work and framing. The interior of the house is unknown. Most of the roof is still there. Where they've added eaves to it is bare. It's been like that for over a year. There's tie-vac on the home that's tattered and ripped up. It'd have to be replaced. The siding and plywood sheeting would have to be looked at very well. It may need to be replaced. That's not made for exterior use for exposure to the weather. So with the time frame of 1 year, the cost of what Mr. McDaniels thinks it might be repaired, I don't think that really works out for the neighborhood, but I'm not saying we shouldn't do it.
Correct. Do we know right now what the assessed value of that home is, or the SEV of it? I'm looking right now. I can't seem to find it.
I have the SEV is at 17.5, which
gotcha.
I'm not sure how accurate those are.
Not
I've looked
these
at a
days,
lot
yeah,
of
they're-
homes that you can pick up for very low amounts of money, and the SEVs are 40, 50,000 within blocks of that neighborhood. And I know you couldn't get that kind of money for the home. That's just my personal.
Thank you.
Mr. Steve, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the information we have in front of us on the nuisance abatement hearing, information dated August 4th, 2011. And at that time on the report, it said there's no siding on the east, west, or north side of the home. Interior partially studded. No roofing on east or west overhangs, bare plywood. Appears abandoned. Going a little further down, there was a permit pulled in 2008, and work stopped then. It's still owned. It hasn't gone through the foreclosure process with the county yet.
No.
So for us to table it and wait for someone to hopefully buy it and then go through a permit process, it's already been exposed to the elements based on when the permit was canceled, for potentially 4 years.
Yes.
And we did this before in 2007 when most of us started on council. We had a house that was all brick, and we were like, well, it can be saved because it has a good solid structure, but the interior was completely destroyed just from going through the elements and going through the weather, and with no heat in the house. It was completely destroyed. So as much as I'd like to say this, unless we got a buyer coming up tonight, it's been sitting on the books for several years. And
Yes.
we haven't been able to get hold of anybody, or they haven't responded to us. I don't see how anyone else is going to go find them. I believe it says they live in Milan. Go find them, buy the house from them, and then get the other 2 mortgages off the hook when it says it's, you have to go through a short sale process. I think, was it 70,000 in notes out there? So we're looking at more than 90 days. And the residents in that area have already suffered with this being that way for 4 years. I don't think it's, my personal opinion, I don't think it's worth waiting for. So that's where I'm at on it.
Any further discussion? Seeing no tabling motion, we'll go to the motion. Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Ms. Colegio?
No.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, under these circumstances, yes. Item 12.
Item 12A, request of the Police Department for approval to purchase 8 2011 Crown Victoria Police Interceptors from Mauer Brothers Ford Incorporated at the per unit amount of $23,910, including delivery fees, for a grand total of $191,280. Authorization for payment to be made within 10 days of delivery, ITB-W-8514.
Motion to approve with discussion.
Motion by Green. Support by Werner. Discussion, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Captain Hendrickson and Deputy Commissioner Glasso. Would you go through what we talked about in our subcommittee meeting on the reason we're buying these vehicles, some of the ins and outs, and why we're getting these as the last potentially available Crown Vics?
Yes, good evening, Honorable Council. Once again, for the record, Deputy Police Commissioner Louis Galasso, and with me also is Administrative Captain David Hendrickson. We are respectfully requesting this purchase today, and I would like to highlight 3 very salient points. A, the Crown Victorias have been the vehicle of choice for the Warren Police Department for a number of years now, and for that matter, throughout the nation. However, they have terminated the production of this model in 2011. Captain Hendrickson has diligently surfed the entire nation, quite frankly, in an effort to capture the handful of remaining vehicles that are out there. And we were successful in locating 8 of these vehicles, which is another salient point, that normally we request 10 vehicles per year. That's generally what we go through based on the wear and tear and the amount of miles we put on vehicles. We have implemented a new fleet maintenance program, which we are very confident will reduce the number of miles. It'll just basically spread the wealth, if you will, or spread the amount of miles that are being placed on cars. Therefore, we feel that 8 will be the number. By purchasing the Fords versus any other type of product, we are able to retain about $6,000 per vehicle, and that $6,000 will be retained based on the fact that we will not have to refit many elements of what goes into a Scout car, and that would be the plastic rear seats, the overhead lights, the cages, the computer mounts, everything that fits in, obviously, the 2010, the 2009, and the 2008 Crown Victorias will easily be placed into the 2011. And my final point that I would like to highlight is the fact that the entire purchase is going to be made for the second year with drug funds that will obviously not go against our general fund whatsoever. So this purchase will cost the taxpayers nothing and the drug man everything.
Thank you, Captain Glasso, or Deputy Commissioner Glasso. The Automobile Subcommittee met earlier this evening, and we do make a recommendation to the council to approve this purchase. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy Galasso?
Hello, sir.
So these are basically considered last year's model?
That's correct. Of course, they've never been used. I mean, they're brand new, but they are 2011 models. We were successful in finding those.
And it it took some taking through our backup. I noticed that to find these vehicles, not every Ford dealership in this county or Wayne County or Oakland County stocks these type of vehicles.
That is true, and I will defer that to Captain Henriksen. We actually had to go outside of the state, which is something we normally do not like to do unless, of course, it's going to save taxpayers money. Captain?
Well, as the deputy commissioner says, well, we put this out to bid, and we only had some folks from Illinois, actually, someone from California. We had, I think, about 40 of them, but the shipping cost was just way too much. But and Gorno Ford, who's in the state, but I think that they're actually the high bid, but I'm not sure if they're, getting them from out of state also and adding the cost to it. But it boils down to we purchased them from Illinois, and like the deputy commissioner says, I think through our fleet maintenance, we should be able to get away with 8 this year. So we already have a shipment of 2011s that we purchased last year.
Yeah.
So we have the 2011s, and the specifications that we're getting from these vehicles that we purchased are the exact same as the vehicles we have now from the last purchase.
So I believe it was Commissioner Green that said the last time that we purchased vehicles that we would be moving towards the Dodge Charger next year once these are unavailable.
Well, actually what kind of prompted this was the catalyst to look for these Crown Victorias is that we did some analyzing of different vehicles that we could use for the city of Warren. Quite frankly, the Charger's not looking very promising because of some room issues in the back seat of getting prisoners in and out through the cages and that sort of thing.
And there was just a recall on them too.
Was there?
A couple days ago.
They're a good car, don't get me wrong. The Dodge is a good car, but we looked at the Chevrolet Caprice pretty thoroughly, and also the Tahoe, which would work good for us. We're still going to look at some Ford products, so we're not done with our investigation. But during that process, we found that it's going to cost us $30,000 pretty much no matter what we do. And the reason being is we're going to have to add about $4,000 to outfit all these cars. So any new car that we got to get a new plastic seat in the back. We got to get a new cage system, which does not fit, from the Crown Vics. We can't change it over. One benefit is that we actually can change the cage system from the Crown Vics over to the Caprice if we do choose to purchase the Caprices. So there's some savings there. There's a lot that went into it, but again, the catalyst to look for these last few remaining Crown Vics was the additional cost. It's going to cost us about $30,000 next year, which is going to be a big chunk out of our forfeiture funds.
And what goes into the vehicle once we purchase them? How long is the turnover before they're ready for patrol?
Each
Computer
car
system has to be put in, and
well, we give it to our Department of Public Works, and each car can take up to a couple weeks for them to strip out the old car and outfit the new car. Part of that process also, when we're looking into the new vehicles that we will purchase next year, is maybe some of the wiring harnesses that they have to actually make up at DPW. We're going to order with the car, and so I'm looking at ways to try to expedite that process also, so we get the cars turnover quicker. And as the deputy commissioner also talked about, is we're looking at mileage, and we might actually add a little bit of mileage to some of these cars that we're driving, but actually keep the maintenance. Make sure they're safe and make sure they're working properly for the officers, but maybe possibly add a little bit of mileage to some of these cars before we change them over.
now will there be 8 vehicles taken out of service once these vehicles are delivered? Or are we going to?
Well, what I'm going to do, I think, is no, we're not going to take 8 vehicles and just pull them out of service. What we do, actually, by managing this fleet a little better and by watching the rotation of the mileage and the maintenance, and we'll wait for a vehicle to get a certain mileage, and then we'll take that one vehicle out at a time. So yeah, the one vehicle is going to be out of service. We'll have to take the new car, change it over. It's going to be less of a stress for the fleet.
Okay, I appreciate your diligence in finding these. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? How long is the changeover time? When you get these vehicles, and just more out of curiosity, get them road ready?
If well, right now, we're using the Department of Public Works. If they can get to the vehicle, they advise it takes about a couple weeks per vehicle, about 2 weeks.
Definitely, the Crown Victorias are more noticeable than those Dodge Chargers, so I don't know if that's good or bad, but nonetheless, we know that it's a police officer's car when it's a Crown Victoria. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Stevens?
if I may. Right now, it's a couple weeks for the Crown Vics, but if we were to switch over to a Charger or some other vehicle, that's a new vehicle that they haven't done the transition with.
That's a good point, Councilman Stevens. But if we order some of the cars with some of the wiring harnesses I was talking about, we can actually upfit some of these cars prior to them coming here if I price it outright. So that's something that we're looking into. It's a possibility to expedite the changeover process.
Okay. Yeah, I know that a lot of people are going to the Chargers, even the state police are. But Chevy is coming out with Police Interceptor also next year. And I also understand that Ford is rethinking stopping production of the Crown Victorias too, so.
Well, they did stop the production in 2011. Ford actually they're utilizing the Explorer and the Expedition, which we are looking into. And we looked at the Charger very thoroughly, and the Chevrolet you're talking about, they actually make two. One's the Impala, and one's the Caprice. The problem with the Impala for us is it's a front-wheel drive vehicle. There's issues with room in the back of the car. And there's also issues with room in the front. We actually are going to be placing new laptop computers that we got money through a grant because we're implementing on-the-road report writing to keep the officers out on the road more, not have them in the station. But unfortunately, the laptop that the company that we use, Clemis, only authorizes a certain laptop, which actually is a little big. So what that means is that I got the two biggest guys, put them in a car with that laptop, and we kind of get our answer what kind of car we need. I mean, to put it.
Yeah.
No, you got to have room.
So.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Ms. Collegio.
Yeah, I have a question, actually, not for the gentleman here, but regarding the automobile subcommittee. Actually, a question through the chair, if I may, to the city attorney. If I can ask the attorney a question.
Yes, please.
You know, now that we've gone to districting, right, we're in districts now, and you have 2 at large, and you have the 5 in districts. When you come up to a subcommittee, like the automobile subcommittee, if you're a representative for a district and not the whole city, if you have a committee, I'm not even sure who's on the automobile committee, I apologize, I didn't look before I came, but if you have subcommittees now, and they're comprised of, let's say, 3 people that are in districts and not representing the whole city, and their intent, and, you know, a representative from a district, they should be there to represent their district, the best interests of their district, and the city as well, but does it change the subcommittees now that we're in, you know, we're in districts now? We're kind of setting precedent, you know, we're the first council that's in districts here, I believe, in the city. We have 2 at large, we represent the whole city, and then we have 5 district people. When you go into districts, can district people go into a meeting to come out and give, you know, just advisory, you know, and represent the whole city in that, you know, advisory position? That's just my question.
I'm not sure I can answer that fully. However, I'd like to make these observations. Preliminarily, each council person, irrespective of whether they represent a district or are a representative at large, have a duty to the entire city. That should be noted. I believe that's a fiduciary duty to the city. And that large representative, of course, represents all the people of the city, and by inference, logically, they represent each district as well. The rules of procedure adopted by this body does not address this issue, nor is there any historical basis that we can go on in how to treat this situation. The ultimate question, I believe, is whether we ought to change the way committees are adopted, or rather formed, and what membership should constitute those committees, given the fact that we are now in a district and at-large voting pattern. That is a political consideration, not a legal consideration. I do not believe there's any proscription against having 3 persons, say, on a committee who are district representatives, or for that matter, 2 at-large and 1 district representative. So I think that as we move forward from this point on, you make a very good point, Ms. Collegio, and you ask a very insightful question, whether or not we ought to change the way these committees are chosen is, as I say, a question that's left up to this body, and that would be my inclination at this point. I could always do some research on that, but I do believe that this is a political decision, a practical decision to be made by this body, and that's all I could say at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Deputy Commissioner and Lieutenant, congratulations for being able to purchase the vehicles with drug forfeiture money. I don't know if that's a full congratulations that we can get that much money to purchase the vehicles, but you know, congratulations. And you know, by us purchasing 8 more vehicles, that in the future you're going to have to retrofit other vehicles, correct?
Yes.
You know, when we switch over, are we just purchasing 8 more vehicles that will also have to retrofit in the future? Just a question.
Well, first off, and getting back to a question that was asked earlier, and which will also lead up to the question you have, for each purchase that we have and everything that we retrofit for now, when we move a vehicle out of our fleet, it becomes decommissioned and it goes elsewhere into the city, one of the various departments, be it water, sanitation, et cetera, engineering. Some of the equipment that we are ultimately going to find ourselves having no use for, because there's obviously not a reason to have a cage or overhead lights per se, you know, in the engineering department, we will be able to place on Mitten and see if we can auction it off through there. There's many other communities throughout the country, believe it or not, that have a much slower pace, if you will, and they purchase emergency equipment, especially like down south and such, where a car has 150,000 miles, and they're glad to get that police car for $5,000. You know, when we're communities like ourselves in Sterling Heights and, you know, New York are getting rid of cars that have 125,000 miles, they feel it's more economical to put $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000 into a car that they purchased $5,000 for. So they will be needing that equipment, and that is one avenue we may have to recoup some of the money that we're going to be losing. But there's no way to look at it. I mean, if our friends in Dearborn kept making Crown Vics for the next 15 years, we would be a much happier group of people here today. But that, of course, is not the case, so it is going to force a retrofit at some point in time.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm good.
One question, motion, Mr. Green? Oops. Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Werner?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Colegio?
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, yes. Item passes. Next item, please.
Item
Thank you,
12B,
Counsel.
request of the wastewater treatment plant for approval to purchase one 2012 GMC Sierra 1500 4x4 extended cab work pickup truck in the amount of $27,173, and one 2012 GMC Savannah 1500 cargo van in the amount of $22,143.75 from Red Holman Pontiac GMC for a grand total of $49,316.75. Authorization for payment to be made within 10 days of delivery.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Support.
Motion by Sadowski, support by Stevens. Discussion.
Discussion?
Mr. Sadowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also a representative on the subcommittee for the auto, of which we met earlier, and our recommendation is to go ahead to purchase these 2 vehicles. both vehicles, the truck, they're going to be, the truck is replacing a vehicle that's over 10 years old, and from the pictures, pretty dire straits. And then the other vehicle, we've already sold off at auction, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, from everything that was said at the committee, much needed, and the one thing I'm trying to go to my notes here as I'm stumbling over my words, I guess I'm catching from the beginning. The truck that we're purchasing, it's going to be with a cap on it, and then we're also going to have is it the exterior doors on it where you can access toolboxes?
Right, that's correct. Currently, the truck, the four-wheel drive truck is going to be used for industrial pretreatment and storm monitoring program. And currently we use a van, and we're switching to a truck just because with a four-wheel drive vehicle, we believe we can access areas where it's difficult to go with a van right now. We respond to emergencies in the stream, and we also monitor in locations where sometimes you need to go a little bit off-road. And also because of some of the samplers that we pull in, you know, being placed in the sewer, depending on location, sometimes they're rather filthy, and we think we can wash out the back of a truck a little easier than we could when we're using the van. So we're switching to this, and we think it's going to be a good use. And then the van is going to get turned over to another use within the plant for us to be able to stock the shelves with greasing equipment to be able to grease on a routine basis all the pumps and valves around the facility and at our 9 Mile pump station.
If we're using this 4x4 then to answer a call, which would be off-road and taking into some of the fields, would it be advisable that we put an electric winch on the front so we don't get stuck?
That's a possibility. Yeah, we didn't design that in right now, but we do have other vehicles at the plant that do have that.
Because I would imagine that some of the emergencies that you'd be answering to would be fallen trees, trying to retrieve something out of the water. Is that something that you guys?
No, usually, well, fallen trees is kind of out of our purview. There's a forestry division working out of DPW now. I'm talking more where you have oil sheen on the stream, for instance, Bear Creek or Shaner Drain, that kind of thing. Or a color, sometimes we'll see a color and we need to investigate what that is. So it's more the environmental response that we would do. And other than that, we do routine monitoring of a number of industries throughout the city who have discharge limits that we have to monitor and verify that they're complying with.
Right. Okay, very good. I just wanted to kind of quickly go back. I didn't get a chance to address the subcommittee issue that was kind of pointed out. One of the things, just for the residents, when council picks these subcommittees, we as a body of now 7 actually seats each of these commissions. We're the ones that picks the individuals. People volunteer for them. A lot of times it's impossible for all of us to go to all of these meetings. For example, Planning Commission, the library, going to ZBA meetings, and we set up some of these commissions and these committees in order to help to funnel information back to council members, and that's why we do it. No decisions are made in these subcommittees, just recommendations are being brought to them. So I just wanted to make that clear to the public that that's when we do that, that's why we do that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening again, Mr. Monette.
Good evening.
We went through a lot of questions with both the police and Mr. Monette on their various items tonight for their automobile purchases. And for example, I pulled up the 2012 water budget, and we do have in here 2 vehicles being purchased. I think we have $122,000 approved in the budget process, and here I think we're spending $49,000. So while this auto subcommittee we have every time the city purchases some vehicle, the funding for these were just approved in the water budget we did a couple months ago.
Correct.
So while we're approving it again here tonight to enter into the contract to purchase, we already had this and vetted it out during our budgetary process 2 months ago. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Stevens and Mr. Bacamino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Burnett, and that's what I went to, too, was I went back and looked at the budget, see what we had approved there.
Right.
And that's why I was in full agreement with this, especially after you showed me the pictures. So what's going to happen with the electrician's van that's what you had listed one of the vehicles to be?
Yeah, that van went to auction at the end of last year.
Okay,
So that's already gone.
All right, but these are the only two purchases that you had in your water budget, and this is
Right.
all you're going to need?
For this year, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, you know, when you were talking about the police vehicles and they talked about moving their vehicles into other fleets, we happen to be one of the fleets that receives a lot of hand-me-downs. And we do our best, you know, and if you come to see our fleet, you'll see that we keep these things running a good long time. That van at auction, it was bought for $500, so it was in pretty bad shape.
Okay.
But we used it for many, many years.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bacamino.
Thank you. And myself being the third member of the Automobiles Subcommittee, I understand and I think the question is valid, what Councilwoman Collegio brought up, but the judge makes a good point about fiduciary responsibility, the state model, and we can certainly do whatever we want with the city, how we want to organize things next time, but I know that in the state model, we have House of Representatives, for example. I was talking to State Rep. John Swatowski. He's not in my district now, but he's on some committees that, you know, he makes recommendations for the entire state. As long as they do it with, they say, fiduciary responsibility, then they take it back to the entire House, and it is voted on. So if we do adopt models, I would like to at least be consistent with the state model. And but certainly we have a right to change anything we want at the city level. But if those kind of models are already in place, and his vote does count for the entire state, but it's a recommendation by his committee for the House, it doesn't become a vote until it comes to the full House. So that's, I guess, the only comparison I could think of right offhand. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Ms. Collegio.
Yep. Yeah, I think it would be helpful for me, you know, when we have the subcommittees, you know, I know the Planning Commission and all the other committees and commissions are in charter. You can go back and find when they start, you know. I had difficulty finding where any of the subcommittees started. I haven't found it yet, but that's fine. Maybe it would be more useful if they didn't meet right before the meeting. And the subcommittee is supposed to be an informational meeting and come back and give their recommendation. Maybe it would be helpful if they met a little earlier and they could give the rest of the council a little input on some of the questions that were asked in the committee meeting. That's all. I guess that's what I'm looking for. Maybe, you know, that's it. But anyway, Mr. Monette, I think, I know from looking at background from your vehicles too, God bless you guys over there. I don't know how you tape them together. And I'm in support of this. You know, it was budgeted. You guys do get the last of the vehicles and a lot of dirty work. And, you know, bless you with it. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Manette, I have a question in regards to our package here. We usually see the bids tabulated, you know, or people that made the bids. In this one, we did not.
Right, these are actually fleet bids, and so what we do is for the specific vehicle that we're looking for, we look at the fleets from Oakland County, Macomb County, and the state who have already bid these vehicles as a fleet bid, and so that's probably the best price we're going to get anywhere. And so for the two vehicles we have, one of them came off the Oakland County fleet bid, and the other one came off of the state fleet bid.
All right, okay. I've noticed there's Oakland County Purchasing Division. That's where you bought it from, right? At least one of them?
Well, both of them came from Red Holman, who were, you know, had their fleet covered.
State and Oakland?
Yeah, both,
Okay.
both happened to be the Red Holman vehicle on both of those fleet bids.
And you understand how there's a consortium for Oakland County, they put a purchasing package together?
Right.
Why don't you explain that a little bit so people know the efforts that are made in order to get that lowest price?
Right, on an annual basis, they put together a list of vehicles, and then, you know, they go out to bid to all the dealers for those particular vehicles, and certain dealerships, I believe, bid certain vehicles, and so each fleet bid would have a type of vehicle, and they're not all the same. You're not the lowest vehicle that we were looking for, the four-wheel drive truck, came from Red Holman, and in this case, it so happened that the van that we were looking for was also Red Holman, but that's not always the case. We just look for which one had the lowest fleet bid, and we'll accept that low bid. And
Okay.
it's a good thing for the city to get good prices.
All right, and I've never seen Macomb County purchasing division. Is there such thing?
Yeah, there's Macomb
Okay.
County
I
fleet.
just
I
haven't
think
seen it. The
years
prices
ago-
aren't that good, is that why we never see it as?
Well, I'm not sure what the deal is, but I can remember years ago, some of the earlier vehicles I purchased in my career ended up coming from Van Dyke Dodge.
Yeah,
Some of our
I
older
do
vehicles are
remember some
Dodges.
purchasing
And that
from
was
there
off
for a
the
while ago.
Macomb fleet,
Yes.
and I'm not sure why they haven't been competitive lately.
Okay, just so that everybody understands, we'd love to buy local if we possibly can, but price-wise, because of these purchasing packages,
Right.
that we do go to the lowest price, and it can't always be from Warren, and it can't always be from the state,
Right.
as we just saw as well. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. President?
Mr. Sadowski.
Just to let people know, some of the Warren dealerships may not choose to participate in the bid process as well.
They don't want to lower the price that much,
Right, and I know that's when,
or be in that sort of market.
when Centerline Harley Davidson was still in business, one of the things that they had talked about is that they were getting out of the police motorcycle business because there just was no money to be made there.
Yeah, and we did lease the motorcycle division of the Warren Police Department with the Harleys to the Harley Davidson dealer.
Yep.
All right, thank you. That's a good explanation so people watching know. Seeing no further discussion, we'll question the motion. Mr. Sadowski.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Mr. Warner.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino.
Yes.
Ms. Colegio.
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, yes. Item passes. Item C.
Item 12C, consideration and adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement and grant of easement for water main at 28877 Shaner, JPTH Properties, Warren LLC.
Any motions?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Sadowski, support by Warner. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Item passed unanimously. Item D.
Item D, consideration and adoption of a resolution approving an increase to the current agreement between the Macomb County Department of Roads and the City of Warren for traffic signal modifications necessary to the Ryan Road reconstruction project from 8 to 9 mile roads in the amount of $5,581.56. Also, payment number 2 and final be issued to the Macomb County Department of Roads in the amount of $5,581.56.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Green.
Support.
Support by Mr. Bacamino.
Discussion.
Discussion, Mr. Green.
Mr. Odeski, could you tell us a little bit what happened here, please?
Good evening, council members. Last year, we had a construction, we reconstructed Ryan Road between 8 and 9 Mile Road. During construction, obviously, there was certain traffic modifications that are required to shift the traffic while we're working on the roadways. And typically, we enter into agreement with the Macomb County Department of Roads for the services that they provide. Macomb County usually estimates the work that may be necessary. In this particular instance, they appears to us that they underestimated the necessary amount of work, and usually their estimates or the agreement that we enter is actually we are required to pay costs that the Macomb County Department of Roads incurs. So this is just the difference between what they estimated and what was billed for actual work that was done on this particular project.
Thank you, Mr. Odeski.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Sadowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Dusky, thank you for meeting with me last week. As you know, the traffic light on Milton still is blinking, and I know that you've been diligent in talking with the county and trying to work out some kind of a program in order to get that back. I also had a gentleman who had contacted me, and we did speak to you about this, on 10 Mile would like a traffic light installed there. What is the best way to have that investigated in order to, this is on 10 Mile between Mound and Ryan. What's the best way to, for residents or even council members to pursue that, to have the county look at that?
The best way would be to refer those questions directly to the Macomb County Department of Roads, the Traffic Division. They maintain not only the traffic signals within county roadways, but also within city. When it comes to maintenance or improvements on traffic signals located in city roadways, we enter into agreement and we pay for the services. When it comes to county roadways, they strictly maintain those. So if we get a complaint, we usually forward it to them. Whether it's a complaint or just inquiry, we would still send it to them, and they do proper investigation and any necessary tests that might be required to look into the issue.
The gentleman I spoke to had indicated that at one time that there was a stoplight at that location. Would you have the information in your office or in records through the city as to why that traffic light was removed?
I don't know of. I would have to research this. If we do have any, I will be more than happy to provide that information.
That would be great. There was something interesting that you had said, that oftentimes if they remove a signal light, it's usually because there's a bit of a detriment by having it there, whether it's clogging traffic within the area, and you had even said that sometimes there's safety issues where they'll go ahead and remove the light because it actually becomes a hazard.
That is correct. Before any modifications or changes to an existing or a new system is being implemented, there is usually a study involved, traffic study, and they act on the findings. And sometimes, maybe it all depends on the situation, but there could be an instance where the traffic light was there, but based on the traffic patterns or maybe number of accidents that occurred in that intersection or vicinity of the area, the study may warrant a removal of that to avoid or eliminate that issue.
Very good. If you don't have the information at the office, would you just email me the number of who I need to contact at the county? Because I'm sure somebody has documentation as to why they removed it. So
I definitely will. If I may ask for the location one more time,
it's on 10 Mile between Mound and Ryan Road.
Definitely, I'll search that and address that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Warner? And Mr. Stevens.
Real quick, Mr. Ordesky, could you email that phone number to all of us? Because I've had a couple of questions from residents about traffic signals and the changing patterns.
I definitely will do
All
so.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening.
Good evening.
Another a point of possible location for information on that, wouldn't that be with the traffic engineer at the police department?
They usually deal with stop signs.
Okay.
Traffic signals are under jurisdiction of the Macomb County Department of Roads.
Yeah, but don't they maintain the records also when they're put into operation?
Possibly. I can look into this issue too.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, the blinking traffic lights is very frustrating to a lot of residents. I think we've all gotten calls on this. I actually had a meeting with the police and the traffic signal engineer from the county. From one point, if the lights are going to be blinking 24/7, 365 days a year, why aren't we taking them out? Because I still see people pulling up to the blinking yellow light going down 12 Mile, and they start to stop. And then you get a rear-end accident there. During that meeting I had some time ago, we talked about this issue and the blinking lights and why can't we turn them on? It's the old story of, Grandma wants to get out and go to the store. Can we have the lights on from 10 to 2? Not during rush hour, because the argument was we need the traffic to flow during morning rush hour and afternoon rush hour. Fine, have them on from 10 to 2. So people who are out during the day can get out safely. The other part of it was, he said that the traffic signal engineer said to, call him. He'll talk to the residents. And that's their job at the county because they maintain all the signals. The other part about it was, going down 12 Mile, I asked him, why are the lights blinking here and there? Well, they did a traffic study in 2008, prior to the mire being put in. And now that you have the mire traffic, there's so much traffic coming out of that mire, it's very difficult to, for example, by us, Milton and 12 Mile. You can wait 5 minutes to be able to find a safe spot to turn out. And that's the argument. They said, well, we did a study in 2008, and then we're going to time the lights in 2013. How do you do a study in 2008, and then they want to time all the lights down 12 Mile from a study when you have all that new infrastructure put in there? That doesn't make sense. I know it's an engineering discipline, but they need better data. And this may be something you want to talk to the traffic signal engineer, because we're all getting calls on it, and we'll continue. And as much as we say, call your county commissioner, because they have the information and the hand on the traffic signal engineer, we're still getting calls on it, and we need some type of direction to go. All right, thank you.
You know, that brings me up to a point as well, you know, timing of these lights to move traffic. And maybe you bring up a good point, Mr. Green, is that these studies are old, and maybe we need some updating, because you can't move in some traffic at times, and it's ridiculous. You go the speed limit, you're going to stop, go. You're not going to move anywhere. And if the idea is, you know, we are the third largest employer in the state, and we have to move traffic. And that's what this city, because you're stuck in certain times, but 12 Mile, 13, there's just many examples of why we're not moving in the city, and it takes, you know, from 13 Mile to get to 696 longer than it takes to get from 696 to downtown Detroit. And I believe it's timing. What we've done in the past, and I'd ask Mr. Stevens, why not bring the engineer from the road commission to a council meeting? We'll have a committee of the whole. We've done that a long time ago, and we got a lot of good answers. And maybe it's time we start inviting the county, the road commission people who are responsible for this to sit down and talk and have the communications. I had someone ask me about the crash data at certain intersections, and I FOIA'd for a resident, FOIA'd it, a Freedom of Information request to the County Road Commission. They didn't have the information. It was at the police station. So it's a lack of knowledge of where to get the information as well sometimes, and maybe when we sit down with the Road Commission, the engineer, and I don't think they would mind coming out here. We pay plenty of taxes to the county and roadways in our community, that we can have a lot of these questions answered, so we can be more effective as council people in getting answers for residents and explanations as well, and maybe find out when most of these studies were done. So with that in mind, Mr. Stevens, but in regards to questioning the motion, seeing no further discussion, Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Ms. Collegio?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, yes. Item E.
Thank you.
I had made a note of that. in fact.
Thank you.
Item 12E, consideration and adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with the Road Commission of Macomb County for 2011 through 2012 winter maintenance on DeQuinter Road from 8 Mile Road to 10 Mile Road.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve as it directly affects District 1.
Motion by Green.
Support.
By Werner. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passed unanimously. F.
12F, consideration and adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with the Road Commission of Macomb County for 2011 through 2012 mowing agreement for weed and grass maintenance on Mound Road from 8 Mile Road to 14 Mile Road, on Shaner Road from 11 mile to 14 Mile.
Motion to approve with...
Motion by Sadowski.
Support.
Support by Stevens. Any discussion? All in favor, say...
Yes, sir.
There is discussion.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sadowski.
Mr. Neighbors? The contract that we're approving is going from October 27th to 2011 to September 2012. Did we have any work or any maintenance work done on those islands between October and now?
I'd have to look back at the records to see when the last cut was for last season.
I could certainly see a cleanup or some type of activity in late October. I was just wondering, you know, we're approving a contract obviously during January, February, and most of March. We're not going to have any cutting going on those easements. But the only concern I had is that, we did have contractors available at that time doing the work, and are we sitting on invoices that need to be paid?
Yeah, actually, I believe we still have some outstanding invoices with Green Metals. We're still working on getting that final bill paid for them. When they ended, I'd have to look and see exactly. There may have been one or two cuts possibly in October. But we do have the final bills now. We're just tallying them up and been working with them, and we're going to be
Well, it would
coming
almost
to-
have to be November because
It may have been.
the last the first day of this contract that we're approving tonight is October 27th. But again, like I said, I know that there's cleanups that go all the way into November. Although with the weather we have, we could probably actually cut some of that grass. So thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Neighbors, in regards to Shana Road, what is there to, Mound Road, we have
Yeah, Shaner, there's just a few city-owned right-of-ways. Most of them are on the east side, between 11 and 12. There's a few miscellaneous spots that there's fences along there and the back up to some courts, so the homeowners don't take care of those. So there are some select right-of-ways that we cut all up and down Shaner.
so that's the reason why we need it on Shana.
Yeah, that's county-owned road too, so that's included in that contract.
Okay. And just so residents know, this is winter time. It's probably a good time to enlighten everybody. What roads let's just take we'll take the major roads. What roads are the county responsible to plow, and what roads are the city required to plow?
Okay, the main roads.
Just so someone knows who to complain
Right,
to
yeah.
and find out who's doing it, because the county takes care of the
Yes,
north, and they
a
get
lot
here a
of them.
little late sometimes.
Right.
And we're right at the bottom of literally of the scale.
A lot of them are
Right.
last.
Okay,
Correct.
please, just
Yeah,
so
there
residents
are,
know.
there are a lot of maps available. I believe the city calendar even has a map on it that shows you the roads we take care of. But the north and south roads that Warren takes care of would be Hoover and Ryan from 8 Mile to 14 Mile. And then going east and west are the odd-numbered mile roads, 9, parts of 11, not the service drive, but actual 11-mile road.
The old 11.
Yeah, where it cuts in and out. 13-mile road, Chicago Road, and then all of the half miles, Topher, Stevens, Masonic. And there are some other miscellaneous, Hollingsworth, and some local access roads that cut through that we consider main roads. But like Shaner, Hayes, Mound, Van Dyke, those are all county or state roads, and the county maintains them for the state, so.
Good. Well, thank you very
yes.
much and so people remember, so you're watching this and
Yes.
know who to make a phone call to if you
If-
don't think it's getting done in time.
Correct.
Any further discussion? I had Mr. Sadowski make the motion. Who made the support? Mr. Stevens? Will all in favor say aye? Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Item G.
Item
Thank you.
12G, request to approve an increase in budgeted revenues and appropriations in the amount of $88,000 budget of the general fund to account for receipt of a grant from the state of Michigan's Advanced Lighting Technology Demonstration/Efficiency and Conversion Grant Program, and consideration and adoption of a resolution approving said request.
Motions.
Motion to approve.
Motion by
Support.
Warner, support by Stevens. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Collegio?
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, yes. Item passes. Item H, please.
Item 12H, consideration and adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute grant agreement MEO-12-27 between the state of Michigan and the city of Warren for the installation and induction lighting at the Warren City Hall parking structure and community center parking lot.
Motion to approve with discussion.
Motion by Warner, support by Ms. Collegio. Discussion, Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gamble? The first part was to approve the grant.
Good evening,
This part
Council.
is to approve what you're about to discuss. Could you explain what this is going for?
Yes, this is a grant received from the Michigan Energy Office, and this is also part of the state of Michigan's EECBG allocation. And so originally, we actually received the first round of this funding through the LED demonstration project. Since then, they had this advanced technology lighting demonstration project, so I wrote the grant in March of last year, and they awarded it to us, or offered it to us at the beginning of this year. This particular project, the installation of induction lighting in the parking lot and in the community center parking lot, is in line with, we had an energy audit done of our facilities. This is part of the energy auditor's recommendation as far as what to install in these locations. So this will save energy, and I believe there's a breakdown of the...
No, the breakdown of the lights, 73 in the community center parking lot, 44 in the community center wall packs, and 169 in City Hall parking garage for a total of 286. How were those numbers determined?
We had the auditors first look at those lights. We also, when we awarded, we did a lighting upgrade as part of our implementation of audit recommendations. That project, that particular lighting company came in, also confirmed those counts. So those were counted twice, once by our original energy auditor and once by the contractor that was awarded the lighting, to do lighting improvements.
Now, the total estimated savings, $27,700 and some change, that will be seen within 2.5 years?
Yes, and that was taken off of the City of Warren's investment, the DDA providing those matching funds of $70,000. Based on that calculation with those assumptions of 12 hours per day at a kilowatt hour rate of 8.5 cents an hour, we get $27,721.06. And so I just kind of using that assumption for our investment of $70,000 would have a payback of 2.5 years, 2.53 years.
Now, what's the estimated life of the lights?
Induction lights last 100,000 hours, which is about 11 years. For example, when lights are on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as they are in the parking structure, those are on roughly 9,000 hours a year. So, yeah, generally 11 years if on 24/7.
That will utilize a lot of savings over those years.
That's correct. The current lights, I think, last the metal halides, they last 20,000 hours. So, and Dave Ander could tell you he changes them pretty regularly, but they last a little over 2 years each.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Bacamino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gamble, again, you've been involved with a lot of grant writing in a very short time with the city. I don't think, I know you brought back certainly a lot more money than we've expended. That's a good thing, a positive note. Just a quick question on that grant process, because I know that's the kind of thing we can think outside the box and bring in other revenue that normally would go to other states or other cities. Do you go out looking for these grants, or are these applications you submit, or how are you able to get all these? And you've been before us now, and every time it's been good news, so I'm kind of curious to see, so other grant writers can maybe adopt the same.
And
Are
one
you
thing
aggressively seeking them? Are they coming to you, or does the government come to you and say, you're eligible for this, or do you actually have to go out there and...
some of it's, well, you look like the state will give some, and sometimes we'll get notified. We've contacted our state reps, like Sandra Levin's office. They'll notify us of some. I'll check, grants.gov, the state of Michigan website. There are also foundations, and that's why we're having that grant RFP, is there's still a lot of opportunities out there, and you can spend a lot of time looking. So it's a little bit of both sometimes, but I'll sign up for emails and things like that. And there's companies that'll send you emails about grant opportunities, just kind of to let everyone know they're out there.
Well, I appreciate it, because I tell you what, it's hard times I love to say every nickel and dime counts, but every $100,000, it seems like you come before us, we're in the $88,000 to $100,000. I appreciate it. I just am excited about having that money again being used from grants. It's amazing, but appreciate it, and continue the good work.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Ms. Clegio.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Gamble.
evening,
One thing I
Councilwoman.
want to point out from being in the office with you, and we discussed this whole procedure, is that what residents might not see is, once the grant comes in and we get it, they see the lights, they might think that's the end of it. And I just would like to commend you for the amount of hours that you as a grant writer have to put in after to meet the requirements for each of these. The huge book just for one item that you showed me, just, good job. You're brilliant, you're bright. We need more grant writing going on in the city. And it really is just a pleasure working with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing the community center parking lot, lit up, and just continue going forward. Good job.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Stevens.
Thank you. Mr. Gamble, I also want to echo everyone's sentiments that you've been doing a good job of, bringing the bacon home. And I also I don't know if you know or not, but I think it's in 2 weeks, there's a class down at SEMCOG grant writing.
Okay.
You may be interested in that. Not that you're doing a bad job, obviously, but, a little bit more education never hurt. And there's also some other people in the city that maybe should look at going to some of those classes too, since we're doing our grant writing ourselves.
And Councilman Stevens, I want to thank you for being on the committee, that EECBG committee with us. This is another project that's going to help us attain that goal of a 20% energy reduction. So we'll be tracking that, and we'll keep council appraised of our progress.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Mr. Werner?
Yes.
Ms. Clegio?
Yes.
I'm so used to misters on the support. Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, yes. Item I passes.
Item 12I, requests of the city assessor for approval to adopt the 2012 real property tax poverty exemption guidelines for tax relief under Section 211.7U, Public Act 206 of 1893, and consideration and adoption of a resolution approving said request. Easy for me to say.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Werner, thank you. Any support? Support. Support by Mr. Sadowski. Judge Biernat, do you want to? We have someone else here.
Yeah, city assessor.
City assessor, thank you. I should have put my glasses on, I apologize.
Good evening.
Good evening. You have the floor.
Oh, thank you. I am asking that you adopt the resolution to adopt the poverty guidelines that are used for determining eligibility of applicants for tax relief. This is something that I'm surprised has not been done in the past at the city. It's traditionally done in every jurisdiction. And we have, as you know, I've only been the assessor for 18 months, and so last year was the first time it came to my attention that these did not exist. And but by the time I did find out, it was too late to get them implemented, in time for the board review last year. So I wanted to make sure they got done this year. It's something that will be presented before you every February to reinstate them for that existing year.
Mr. Chair.
Do you have questions about them?
Mr. Werner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mrs. Smith, will these guidelines change from year to year?
They could, but these are the guidelines that have been used for several years in the city.
Okay,
so
thank you.
far. Mhm.
I have when I was reading this, it was fairly interesting. And it says when a poverty applicant is denied relief by the Board of Review, then they go to Michigan Tax Tribunal. Isn't there a fee to get to the Michigan Tax Tribunal, or is it waived if you're in the poverty level?
Actually, since the poverty exemptions are only applicable to your principal residence, any appeal for your principal residence, there is no fee for it through the tax tribunal.
Okay. So if you're denied any property tax relief in regards to this the issue in regards to poverty level, you have a free appeal.
Correct.
Okay. And why did we need this established? Because the tribunal was denying relief?
Well, what they're denying is...
Denying relief to you, or?
To uphold the Board of Review's decision, correct.
Okay.
Traditionally, the tribunal has always accepted whatever the local jurisdiction approved in their guidelines as long as they were compliant with the statutes and, you know, applied equally to all applicants. But recently, the tribunal is making sure that every single aspect of the statute is in compliance, and they do not consider that those that are not adopted by the legislative body to be publicly available and published. So for that reason,
so now we're publishing them?
Correct.
Okay, great. Big difference, huh? Judge Burnett.
I concur with the rationale that's laid out by Ms. Smith. This is essentially a due process issue, and that is notice, proper notice. And fundamental to that is the publishing of these. We've had our standards, we've applied our standards, however, they've never been published.
Even though they're in a state statute?
Well, because they were our own. We adopt, but never formally adopted them, so you couldn't go to a particular document that said this is our established standards.
Okay.
I think that's what they're concerned
Correct.
about.
Anybody, the only people who would actually see these would be the applicants who requested the application and the guidelines, or anybody who just, you know, from the public who asked to see them. But this way, it's guaranteed that they're out there and available to everybody.
In regards to the poverty applicant, what do you have to do to qualify to be a poverty applicant?
It's many pages long.
Well, I mean, if someone wants to get some relief and they're watching this council meeting and maybe they're considering it and they need some relief, where can they get help in order to, you know, consider this type of action before the Board of Review? And that's sort of what I'm trying to, more of a educational process here. If anybody's watching and they may consider themselves, and let's face it, these are tough times, and maybe they are experiencing a poverty level, and maybe they're entitled to some tax relief before the Board of Review in regards to their property taxes. What would they do?
They just need to contact the assessing department at the City of Warren. If they can't make it in to pick up a packet, they can call us and we'll be glad to mail it to them.
All right, and the other question I have, if I have a single family, own my single family home, and I come before the Board of Review and I'm denied relief, and you know, I make my argument, and then to go to the state tax tribunal, you're saying that I do not have to pay a fee in order to appeal to the tax tribunal, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I didn't know that, and that's interesting because you're not limited. If you don't like what our Board of Review says, you go to the state tax tribunal, correct?
That's right. Yes.
That's the good news. The bad news is how long of a wait has it been?
Actually, the tribunal is quite diligent in getting the poverty exemptions heard rather quickly.
No, in regards to poverty exemption,
Yes.
how long have it been your experience?
It's been 6 to 9 months.
Okay, and how about a single-family resident who wants to appeal the Board of Review's decision? How long has that been taking?
For assessment, are you talking
Yes.
about? Much longer.
I know, can you?
Up to 2 years, although the tribunal
That's why I said there's the bad news. It takes about 2 years.
That's for a value dispute.
That's
but
right.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, just so everybody knows, because I had someone, you know, question me in regards to it, and after doing some research and looking at the real property section of the State Bar, that information became, I guess, interesting, to
Yes.
say the least. Thank you. Is there
You're
any further
welcome.
discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Stevens.
If I may. Ms. Smith, we have, you know, the Public Act 206 for residential poverty exemptions, and then we have programs throughout the state for manufacturing. And are there any programs in the state for, you know, Joe's Restaurant or Bob's Tire Changing Place or anything like that?
As far as commercially?
For commercial properties? The small entrepreneur-type commercial properties.
Not currently. There used to be, but they've been eliminated.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Werner?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Colegio?
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, yes. Item passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item 12J, consideration and adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute an application for smart municipal credit and community credit, and to authorize execution of a contract for fiscal year 2012.
Motion approved.
Motion by Green,
Support.
support by Sadowski. Discussion? Does anybody know about this? Because, thank you, Mr. Bowman. Because this sounds, it's an opportunity to get credits or get bus transportation, at least that's how I read it. Does someone apply for these or someone seek to obtain credits? Can you explain this?
Yeah, Henry Bowman, Warren Parks and Recreation Director. We have a transportation program through the city of Warren, and we provide transportation for our residents, 55 and older, and also handicapped individuals. We'll come to their homes, pick them up, take them to doctor's appointments, bring them to the community center, hair appointments, shopping, whatever the case may be. Usually they got to call about a week in advance to our transportation department, and we'll arrange the transportation for them.
Now, the transportation department is through Parks and Rec?
Yes, sir.
All right, so just that everybody knows, it's a great service. We should take advantage of it.
Oh, yes, we have, it's an outstanding service, bringing them, a lot of people really depend on it, and it's, especially in the winter months, it's very well used because, a lot of people don't feel safe, driving on slippery roads, even though we haven't had too many slippery roads this winter. But we can come out and pick them up and take them where they need to go, and it's been a wonderful service. We're happy to partner with SMART on it. SMART has been an outstanding community partner with us. And we're able to provide a lot of seniors and handicapped people access that they wouldn't have.
Now, am I saying this right? Do we use all these credits up as a general rule?
Oh, yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see it's being used.
Yes, we definitely do.
All right,
So,
great. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Green.
Mr. Bowman, this may be an opportunity for some of the phone calls I know I've gotten where, people are concerned about their parents pulling out of the subdivision and the traffic signals and the blinking lights, that we can refer them to
Absolutely.
Parks and Rec, Smart Bus.
Yep.
To handle the transportation.
Absolutely.
So if you would, could you maybe send all of us an email with some of the ins and outs of it so we can have it at our fingertips in case we get that phone call?
Absolutely. And also, you can always go to the news beat, and there's about a half page there that tells you all the ins and outs. So even if you don't have it, but I will make sure every council member gets all of the ins and outs of the program, make sure they're all on top of it, and any residents, you can always turn to the news beat. If you don't have it anymore, you can find it online at cityofwarren.org. And it's usually right in the middle of the book, and it gives you a pretty good description of what would qualify, what doesn't qualify, where we take people, everything across the board.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yep.
President.
Mr. Bacamino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bowman, we were talking earlier, and I had the privilege, I think 3 years ago, we took a tour of the garage, and you showed me the buses, and some of them, I'd always see the seniors taking them to the community center as well. Just briefly, though, where does the money come from again? So people, the theme tonight seems to be grant. Mr. Gamble had grants, and we got,
Well, this is, part of the money comes from, through SMART, through the Michigan Department of Transportation.
Okay.
And it also comes through SMART, which is operated off of millage, of course, transportation millage through the county, which we will get money to operate our buses. So it's just a way to keep our people moving and keep them doing activities, keeping them busy.
this is not coming directly out of your budget for Parks and Rec, though. This
No, it adds to it.
adds to it, which
Yes.
is my point. I want
Yep.
people to understand that that we are adding money from these other sources outside of.
Yeah,
Warren
we
to
totally
provide services.
operate our transportation program off these grant funds.
I mean, you're literally thinking outside the box, but you're literally funding from outside of Warren
Yes.
for these
Yep.
programs.
And not every community offers this, especially at the level we do. And we have the community credits where they can come in and get bus tickets for other trips, whatever the case may be. And they just need, if anybody's interested in that, we do have the guidelines online. And also you can call here at the community center where we can give you further guidelines on getting bus passes to ride the regular smart buses.
Just last question. I know with talk of how vehicles are, I don't know what the word is, passed down to the next department. Are these buses, they belong to SMART, but we use them, we store them, we house them? Is that how it works?
Absolutely, and then when they need to be replaced, it's really nice. SMART just brings us a new one and takes the old one back. So I wish we could do leases like that too,
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Keep up the
Thank
good
you.
work.
Any further discussion?
Mr. President.
Ms. Collegio.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Bowman.
Good evening.
Love your tie.
Thank you.
As usual. A quick question. I know from in the past, like you said, we utilize all the passes. Is there a cutoff date for passes, or should people, call as soon as they, can to sign up, or
Yeah,
if they're regular riders?
Yeah, what we do is we normally issue their bus passes for about 2 months worth of rides. So then when those passes come in, you usually, the exact date, I'm not 100% sure, but you can get passes here at the community center. You can also get passes at Owen Jacks. Now, anybody that's looking to get passes for the community, for the buses, what they need to do is they need to bring in proof of residency, a picture ID, and then there's some other qualifications they'll need to have. So it's just by resident to see if they qualify.
Excellent. And just so people know ahead of time, the bus doesn't come up into the driveway. The resident has to be able to make it down to the curb, so families can know that ahead of time, correct?
Absolutely. The bus driver cannot come up to the door. They cannot bring the groceries up there. So anytime you're going grocery shopping, it should be the amount of groceries that the person can handle, or any shopping they may do. We are not allowed to go farther than that, farther than the sidewalk.
Right, and you can't leave the vehicle,
Yeah.
I'm sure. And another, just really quick, if a resident didn't still have their news beat, and it might not be an internet savvy resident, what number could they call, just to make it easy for them?
They can always call
Number here.
268-0551, and that'll get them right to our transportation department.
Okay, thank you, good job.
Thank you.
Question the motion, Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski.
Yes.
Mr. Warner.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Ms. Collegio.
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino. Mr. St. Pierre, yes. Item passes. Item K.
12K, consideration and adoption of a resolution approving the sale of vacant city property at 13459 Colleen and authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the quitclaim deed, declaration of restrictive covenants, and any other collateral document necessary to consummate the transaction, and approve to issue a check in the amount not to exceed $1,000 payable to the closing title company for closing costs.
Motion.
Motion approved.
Motion
Support.
by Green, support by Stevens. Discussion? No discussion necessary. Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Collegio?
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, yes. Item passes. Item L.
Item 12L, consideration and adoption of a resolution repealing the resolution establishing fines payable at the 37th District Court for certain municipal civil infractions adopted April 10th, 2007. Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Stevens, support by Green. Discussion.
Mr. President.
Ms. Collegio?
Yeah, I just have a few concerns with this right here. I know, I don't believe we ever really discussed this in the committee of the whole. Maybe I'm mistaken, or just a little more backup with it, but I don't recall really discussing this with the attorney's office at all. And, before we, repeal a resolution that was made for fines and everything, which, looking in the back, some of the fines that were there were pretty hefty for your, average homeowner that's just trying to make it, in general. But just from my personal opinion, I'd rather just table it until we can have a meeting with someone from the attorney's office to discuss, exactly what they're trying to do with it and what the move in the future is, with fines, and are they going to in the future keep the same pricing, for the amount of fine? And, there's just a lot of questions I have, and it's just kind of showed up on the agenda without really any warning, just in my opinion. So I would rather table it.
Motion to table by Collegio. Any support? Well, there is no support in regards to this. So in regards to discussion, I just have a question in regards to how did we come up with these fine schedules? And if they're going to go to court without a hearing, is there another fine schedule? And how are they going to determine the fines in regards to this? Because, when I went door knocking, and it was a long time ago, I can't remember the year, we passed the recreational vehicle ordinance. And this still, and I don't even recall everything about it, and we passed it as a council. And I don't know all the ins and outs of it. And I guess if you're going to have a recreational vehicle, you probably should know, quite frankly, but not everybody goes through ordinances and understand them as well as other people, say attorneys or city attorneys or judges. But looking at this, if you have a recreational vehicle ordinance violation, you can be over $1,000 easily. And I can see this as storage or dumping of lumber or debris, and just the improper preparation of garbage for garbage collection, improper separation of brush and leaves and yard waste, $265. I don't know where someone came up with this, and I guess if I'm going to feel responsible for this, I would want to be able to explain to somebody the rationale for coming up with this dollar number for these types of violations. And looking at some of this other stuff, you're in the park after hours, and I don't know, there's just a lot of these fines and costs that seem to be outrageous. So I can't support this until I have maybe a little bit better history or information about this and how it all came to light. And do people wanted to pay this fine rather than showing up? It's my understanding they want them to show up. And so I just don't know it myself right now. And under this scenario, I can't vote for it right now until I guess I know something more about it. So that's my position as well. And so we'll question the motion. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Stevens.
If I may, the fines periodically come to council, and council approves them through a resolution. But what we're doing here is repealing these fines, which by being ticketed, they're authorized to write the check and mail that in and admit responsibility of it. The problem is that's not happening, and they're not required to come to court. By repealing these, they're going to be required to come to court, and then a judgment, given them by the judge, and the fine assessed at that time.
I guess the question is for Judge Biernat. Judge, are we responsible for setting the fine schedule? Is that up to the 37th District Court judge in their discretion?
I believe that under the revised Judicature Act 600.87727, it is within the province of the court to set the fine. These fines were set, I don't have the history, I don't pretend to have the history, I haven't been here long enough, but it seems to me that what happened was in connection originally with the blight court and the idea that persons could pay certain fines and not appear. And what has happened apparently is that this has not encouraged compliance.
They're not paying?
They're not paying, and they're not appearing. So
and it can't afford it, but okay.
Well,
whatever the reason.
I have no comment on the appropriateness of the fine, but under the Judicature Act, I believe that it is a judicial, it's within the province of the judiciary as opposed.
All right, so in essence, what we'd be doing, if we were to vote in favor of this, then we're done with this fine schedule, and it would be within the discretion of the 37th District Court judge.
I believe that's a fair statement.
Well, with a little explanation, that solves my problem.
We're restoring it to what it was, I believe. That's essentially what it was.
Okay, so that makes me feel a little bit better than I understand it better. Thank you. In that vein, I can vote for it then. Any further discussion? Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Ms. Colegio?
Yes.
Mr. Werner?
Yes.
Mr. Sadowski?
Yes.
Mr. St. Pierre, yes.
12M, request of appointment of one council representative to participate in the RFP committee for staffing services.
Nominate Councilman Warner.
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. So done. Congratulations, Mr. Werner.
Item 12N, which was originally 4N, or I'm sorry, 4U. Determination by council, date of public hearing, March 27th, 2012. In re appeal of determination of nuisance at 13850 Topher, vacant dilapidated one-story house with asphalt rain shield and basement, wood shed, open block, and slab front porch, concrete walkway, and miscellaneous debris. Determination by council, date of public hearing, March 27th.
Is there any motion? Why don't we have, I know it's just to set a date. Is there a motion in regards to setting the date, and then we can have discussion? A motion by Mr. Green, support by Mr. Stevens.
And
Ms. Colegio,
discussion.
you've asked for the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to bring something to light to council that I noticed when I was going through the backup on this item. This property here, and after going over to our rental division, this property is owned by a landlord in the city. It's a person that owns other rental homes in the city. My question is, and my concern is, if we have landlords that are in default to the city, can we still have them licensed in the city? I kind of went through our license for rentals, which Mr. St. Pierre, I believe you had a part of putting together back in the heyday, right? And you did, it's a great job, but it says in section 2813, no rental license shall be issued until all of the following fees and debts to the city have been paid in full. D under that is all charges against property for mowing, cleanup, weed, or debris removal. But E is any fees, fines, penalties, or debts of any sort arising from provisions of the property maintenance code, including any blight violations. Right, so I think just, I took this item, and yes, I agree, this item should be, I support, the demolition of the house and everything, but my concern is, I think council as a whole, we need to address, and we need to really sit down and seriously look at rentals in the city and what's going on. I believe the water bill, is there anybody here from rental, or no, did they already go home, or are they already gone? Mr. James is gone. I believe the water bill also wasn't paid, and I believe that's also would be in default to the city if I'm correct. So my question is, if there are other properties in the city that we have abated, or other properties that we've torn down that have been owned by a landlord, should the landlords, if we're doing work in a house as an abatement, and we're having to go out and, tear down, garages and houses, and at the same time we have landlords that are, they have other licenses in the city, I guess to the, I don't know, maybe to the city attorney, can the city, should we still be allowing a landlord to have license at other places in the city if they're in default to the city in another. And that was my concern. And, you know, I thought maybe we could have a committee of the whole. I went and I had a long talk with Mr. Palachek. I think he's trying to do a great job. I think the amount of rentals we have is, you know, we're not unique. There's so many more than there used to be, and I think, you know, the amount of work that's going through that department, they're a work-weary department, I would say, and their staff isn't a large amount of people, and we're coming up to budget. I just thought we should try to have a committee of the whole with the rental division. Mr. Palachek said they've come up with some ideas of ways they're going to try to do things, and they could, you know, possibly update us. But to the city attorney, my question is, and even if it's, you know, not this property in general, but if there is a landlord that's in default, and from talking to the rental division, we have several, okay? If they're in default to the city, should they still have any license to own rentals in the city? That's just my question. And I'd like to set up a committee of the whole regarding rentals. That's what I'm asking, council.
Go ahead.
And Judge Biernan, in regards to that, if we do put together a committee of the whole, you know, of course, rentals are an issue for the city, and we've seen a proliferation. We're going to probably see more in regards to some of these homes on the county tax rolls and investors buying them. In that vein, talking about rentals and, of course, trying to manage them as a city, is there a zoning ordinance possible in regards to rentals? I've seen this discussed some other places in the country, and I'm going to do a little bit more research on it, but maybe the city attorney's office, and we can address this. And some residents had talked about it when I was going door to door through the campaign, and I said I would look into it, and I guess now's the time, better than ever, to think about it, because that may be something that we may want to look at as a city in regards to zoning issue. Now, whether it can be done, to what extent, I do not know, but I know it's been done. There's been discussed in the country, and it's still a due process issue. It's a ownership issue, and so the theme runs the same throughout the country as it would in the city of Warren, as it would in Los Angeles, California. So with that, just to start the discussion and thought process, I don't want to discuss it anymore tonight, but at least maybe get the ball rolling if that's possible. If we have something that the proliferation is getting out of control, what we may want to do as a city as a possibility. Is there any other further discussion in regards to this matter?
May I make a suggestion?
Judge Biernan.
If we could have a full discussion of the concerns raised by yourself, Ms. Colegio, and I'm sure the other members of this council, and if we could have a committee of the whole meeting, perhaps we can clarify or crystallize the issues that should be presented to our office. For instance, the utilization of zoning, we could be more specific as to what we're trying to achieve and the method by which we are attempting to achieve that. It would be most helpful to us, I think it would be most helpful to this body.
Give yourself some time. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you. Likewise, I think I've sent you a couple emails reference some zoning issues. Recently, Wyoming, Michigan passed some zoning ordinances that may, in fact, take care of our problems that we're having with the Shar House in reference to how many people, either parolees or probationary individuals may reside in a specific residence. I would like to address that issue.
There's that. Yes, I remember you saying that, and I understand your concern and the possible approach to resolution of those concerns, especially given the presence of the share house in our community.
Mr. President, if I could just add one other thought. As well, when we come into this, if we're going to try to have a committee of the whole, which it looks like we might be going that way. A thought I had, if we're going to have properties coming up before us that are owned by a landlord in the city, the thought of possibly posting bonds for people that own a certain amount of properties. So if we have to go through, we can just, use the bond to get our money back right away. Or I'd also like to request from this body for that meeting, I would like from property maintenance or rental, from Mr. Palachuk, if council could have a list of all the landlords that are at default to the city. I would like to just see the number and see what we're looking at, so we know, once again, I would really like to, make sure that our rental division knows that I am fully in support of them. I think they have a very difficult job, and I think they're trying to do the best with what they have. But I think council just really needs to take a good look, go drive around, some areas where there's a high amount of rentals, and we just need to take some type of action now. And if landlords are at default to the city, obviously, we need to take a good hard look at that, and we need to tighten it up a little bit to make them, give rental the tools they need to make them comply. So that's my thoughts.
Chair.
Thank Mr. Bacamino.
First, I agree wholeheartly. Councilman Collegio, you're right. We've toured the city, I know in the south end, you and I, and talked to Mr. Palachuk. With this motion, or the item in front of us, the agenda item is just for Topher. So parliamentary procedure, would we just approve this and then wait for the, I guess, meeting of the whole? Or do we have to make a motion for meeting of the whole at a later time as a council body?
We'll leave it up to Mr. Stevens. Mr. Secretary, I think, heard everybody's concern, and I hope that he worked with the city attorney's office and, as the judge indicated, crystallize the issues so we can have a good discussion in regards to it, and the city attorney's office can come prepared in order to give us our parameters of what we can do as a council.
Very well.
Does that sound good, Mr. Stevens? Yep. All right, thank you. And in regards to the motion, as regards to setting the date, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Date is set. Took a long time to set a date, but we got it done, ladies and gentlemen.
Item 13, miscellaneous correspondence.
No, I think we have something, is that, okay, miscellaneous correspondence, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Which we have none. Item 14, audience, an opportunity for citizen participation.
Yes, I think I did see one earlier, so I know there's someone that,
Mr. Chair.
all right, I'm just going to read as far as the, for audience participation, just to, everybody's on notice. Members of the audience wishing to address council may do so by first completing the form provided and handed to the court reporter. Speakers are reminded that they have 3 minutes to address council, and that when the timer sounds, court reporter, when the timer sounds or asked by the chairman, they must conclude their comments. Speakers are further reminded to please state your name, place of residence for the record, and that council members are prohibited from answering questions or commenting during audience participation. So if nobody says anything, that's the rule.
Chair.
And I will, Mr. Bacamino?
Could I add one more thing? Because sometimes people don't write their full name on the paper. We need that. As you can see today, we have different, we don't know who's going to be our recorder each day, or each week. It does change, so even though you assume people know your name, that's not always the case. And obviously there are new residents in Warren too that don't know. So we do require that for consistency, but also for organizational purposes.
Okay,
So
thank
when we
you.
state your name and address, write that as well.
First person is Tony Police. And I am going to let everybody know that there's 1 minute left. I'll put a piece of paper so nobody gets interrupted. Thanks.
Happy Valentine's Day. Tony Priest, 8520 Darlene. I hope you enjoyed the candy.
good.
The water meters. I had mine put in. The guy came up to the, what's his name? He had ID, but he came in a van that had no marking from Warren. I don't think that should be the way it should go, even if they have to tape one on or something while he's doing it, get more identification. And I would advise anybody that has anybody come to the door to put the meter in to make sure that you have them show you identification before you let them in, or just like anybody else, you don't want to let them in if you don't know what's going on with them. Took about 15 or 20 minutes. He was very, very nice, courteous young man. But I think I heard something about cost, as far as the cost of the, I was under the impression that the water meters weren't going to cost us anything. Somebody answer that? No? Yes? Maybe?
We hope that the next council meeting, there's going to be a full report for everybody.
You don't know now whether it'll cost anything or not? You can't answer that? And while I'm on the subject of water and transparency and all that, all I got to say is this. I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm not going to mention names or whatever, but I will tell you this. This is how I personally feel. If Warren has a certificate saying they're very good at being transparent, I hate like hell living in the other cities that he tested. That's my opinion. 12-Mile Road on the west side of Mound, there's a bus stop and a little indentation to go into Myers and all that. Some engineer or somebody in the city ought to take a look at that, because I have yet to go by there without being very close to the person that's turning, and he won't give you any leeway because he has nowhere, he or she has nowhere to go. There's nowhere for them to go. There ought to be some way where they could go in further towards the, they have room, they have ground there, and let them go in further and get out of the way of traffic on 12 Mile, because traffic on 12 Mile is the son of a gun anyhow. You don't need anybody blocking it more than it is. The election, I'm going to go back to it. I hope the people of Warren finally realize that that election was a farce. Not necessarily because who they voted, but the thing about zones, it's not right. It's not going to do the city any good, and they ought to really take a look at it and see if there anything that can be done to change it back to the way it was. I don't mind 7. That's no big deal. But when you made it to zones, I think you messed it up some.
Mr. Police, could you wrap up your comments? It's 3.5 minutes.
I'm going to say goodbye pretty quick.
Thank you.
Look at how many people are in the audience. People ask me, why in, well, I won't swear, but why in the heck do you go to them meetings? What do you get out of it? Well, I get out of the house because now I can't drive, and I'm not going out that often, and I get out of the house. So that's part of the reason I'm here. But I'm not satisfied with what's going on. More people in the city of Warren got to get their butts out here and get involved with what's going on. That's all there is to it. Don't stay home and moan and groan about it. Come here and moan and groan a little bit. I'm sure Cecil St. Pierre will hold up that 1-minute sign and let you go.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
The next person is Thomas Banya.
Good evening, Council. Tomas Banya, resident Warren. I see you laughing over there, Mr. Bacamino. I saw you shuffle the papers. I'm not blind. I'm not stupid either. But I'm going to start off by saying Happy Valentine's Day. And first thing I'm going to talk about here is the new Warren Life website. New Warren Life website is up. It's at warrenlife.info. You can take a look. It's a true model for transparency, not what they like you to believe here is transparency in the city of Warren. That certificate we received tonight is a joke. It's a certificate from a company that we pay. We paid for that certificate. We did not earn it. Next, Smart Transportation Community Credit. Last year, wasn't that bus used for political activities? I could have sworn it was. I saw it at a certain spaghetti dinner, but I may be wrong. Might have been a different bus. Mr. Stevens, a little confused here. I've got 2 notices for Committee of the Wholes on the 27th, and they both have different agendas. So which one is it? I'm a little confused there. Next thing, Mr. Bacamino, I don't know who you were referencing to in terms of the young man, because if you were referencing me, I was laughing at something that was said in the audience, not at what you were saying. The young man, or not so young man that was laughing, I'm sure you would like to know his military record. What's your military record, Mr. Bacamino? Mr. Green, you said something at a previous meeting regarding FOIAs and that there's no definition for unusual circumstances. MCL 15.232, it's right here. Unusual circumstances is in fact defined. Ms. Collegio, I absolutely agree with the statement you made regarding representation from at large, because just because my district representative happens to be on the auto subcommittee, if I was in District 4, for example, and I didn't have a representative in that meeting, I wouldn't feel that it was fair. I'd like to have my representative from my district and my at-large representative there. I got a call an hour before this meeting from a Dell executive because I asked him to look into the Dell computer purchases for the libraries, and I found out from him we got screwed over even more than I thought. It's an embarrassment. But I guess that's how we do business in the city of Warren. In regards to the police vehicles, we went from 6,000 to 4,000 for the retrofits in less than 5 minutes. So it wasn't Taurus and Explorer, or it wasn't Explorer and Expedition that the police department, or Ford is changing to. It's the Taurus and the Explorer. Last thing I'm going to say is, these are the keys to a Dodge Avenger. It's made in Sterling Heights, Michigan, made in America. These are the keys to a Dodge Charger, made in Canada, the same vehicle that the mayor drives. He says, buy American, buy Michigan. Yet he drives a vehicle made in Canada. Quite ironic. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Next, Gloria Sanker.
Good evening, Council. Well, we had another historic weekend. Archbishop Dolan of New York got a call from President Obama, who told him, you have 1 year to put into place a health care mandate to erase the conscience clause in religious hospitals, schools, and charities. What is the conscience clause? This clause permits pharmacists, physicians, and other providers of health care not to provide certain medical services for reasons of religious or conscience. And those who choose not to provide services may not be disciplined or discriminated against. The provision is most frequently enacted in connecting with issues relating to reproduction, such as abortion, sterilization, contraception, and stem cell-based treatments. However, this changed when the President's phone call to Archbishop Dolan. Now, no longer can people of faith refuse to perform abortion and pass out birth control pills. If they don't comply, there will be a penalty. What is the penalty? Well, it could be heavy fines, like hundreds of thousands of dollars for just 1 year. Or it could be closure of the Catholic hospital or other faith-owned hospitals, schools or other charities, and of course, the penalty could be imprisonment. Does this sound like America? It's getting worse and worse, scarier and scarier. Americans really don't believe we have this type of government. They are so focused on jobs and family that they're not aware that they're losing their religious freedoms. You will recall, religious freedoms was the most important reason people left their homeland in Europe to come to America. Our government is failing us in so many ways. Instead of watching and strengthening our freedoms, they are in our bedrooms of the American family, telling them that they can't or can't have children. Isn't that what China is doing? When our government stops enforcing the teachings of the Founding Fathers and the mandates of the Constitution, we cease to be America. In this election, we have candidates who believe that in the Founding Fathers' teachings and want to lead by following the Constitution that was, after all, promised by our President in his oath of office. Don't allow your freedoms to be taken away. If you do, your children will never know how great America was. Happy St. Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Karen Springer?
Karen Springer, longtime resident, and I have just filed a complaint to the City Council about the new ordinance. I have asked for reconsideration on this ordinance because I believe if the records do not show a committee of a whole, I could not participate as a citizen to comment on the changes of this ordinance. Due process of the law allows our participation. The Open Meeting Act also has been violated. I will proceed to file with the state necessary paperwork to correct the proceedings that you failed to do today. Update on the smart meters. We have purchased Neptune. I'm not going to tell you all the details, but I'll give you some of it. The details are: Board of Water Supply sues over broken meters. The Board of Water Supply is suing to get a company to honor its warranty on thousands of broken water meters. The BWS began installing the automatic water meters 9 years ago. The wireless technology was supposed to be end-time consuming manual reading. The lawsuit against Neptune Technology Group said that of the 54,000 Neptune meters, 40,000 failed, well short of the 10-year program. So, these are real issues, and we are just deploying the same meter. Congratulations, City of Warren. You did not do your homework. My other issues are, I received a letter dated February 3rd that my water would be shut off if I do not allow the vendor into my home with the telecommunication device. I am not in violation of any ordinance. I have contacted the FCC and the Michigan Attorney General's Public Integrity Unit to investigate the policies of the water meter replacement program. I will submit. I also went to the Planning Commission yesterday, and it appears that the water meter replacement program did not go to them. They are, under state law, they should have administered and properly seen the procedures through. There are state laws involved, and in general, I have reasons to believe that the Water Department gave Aclara and National Field Services a telecommunication franchise. According to the state constitution, and I've cited the sections that I'm concerned about, and you all took the oath of this constitution to uphold the state law. Local ordinances should not be in violation of state law. We are not in the money-making business of ordinances to put punishment on citizens to pay fines for something on our property. We're protecting our constitutional right under the Fourth Amendment. I again ask, go back to committee with my appeal reconciliation and look at the law that you're in violation of yourself, not the people, the City Council, legislation branch.
Ms. Springer, it's been 3 minutes and 39 seconds.
Okay.
Could you wrap it up?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can, under Robert's Rules of Order, make a motion to suspend the rules. No support, I suspect. There is a local health department, and upon determination that an imminent danger to the health or lives of individuals exists in the local, immediately shall inform the individual affected by the immediate danger in the issue of order which shall be delivered to a person authorized to avoid, correct, and remove the imminent danger or to be posed at or near the imminent danger. The order shall incorporate the findings of the local health department and require immediate action necessary to avoid, correct, or remove the imminent danger. The order may specify actions to be taken to prohibit the presence of individuals in locations or under conditions where the imminent dangers exist, except the individuals whose presence is necessary to avoid, correct, or to remove the imminent danger. When you turn my water off, that applies to me. This is state law,
Ms. Springer,
Part 22.
All right, you've gotten 5 minutes now. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're going to go on to the next speaker. Mrs. Patricia Dezulowski. It's a tough Polish name. I hope
Jeczewski, yeah.
Jeczewski, thank
Yeah.
you.
Hi, I'm Pat Jeczewski, and I thank the council for hearing me. I'm a long resident of Warren. What I would like to say is that this is my second city council meeting that I've attended in several years, and I'm impressed by the council's willingness to question expenditures, question the rationale of purchases, and I've been impressed by their initiating their own investigation into things and then bringing to council meetings what they've noticed, what they've observed, things that they've questioned and gotten responses to so that everybody's more informed. I also appreciate that the council shows respect to people sometimes who are not showing respect to others. I feel as a citizen, that's kudos to you. And I agree with Mr. Polis, who mentioned that he'd like to see more taxpayers at these meetings. As I said, I haven't been for several years, and the flooding situation in our city is what brought me this time. I've been on, I've attended several times on other things, but I haven't been for several years. So I appreciate being able to be here, and I do encourage others to be here so that they can bring their concerns to the council. Otherwise, you're not going to know firsthand, you know. And I just appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. James McDaniel.
Good evening. First off, Mr. Bacamino, I wasn't laughing at the service members. I have two family members that are serving. One's a Marine and one's in the Navy. I wouldn't laugh at that. They're doing things that I wouldn't wish anybody to do, but they have to do it because it's their jobs. And for that, I'm sorry that you thought it was me, that whatever. Second thing is, I'm sure you all read the Warren Weekly about these rental problems. I have those two homes in my hand right here. One is 11123 Dodge. The aluminum step side, or the aluminum you see on the roof, is exactly a step side from an old Chevy van. They cut two pieces of it and put it on the roof because there were shingles missing on the roof. This is a rental property. Not including that the overhangs and the eaves are so rotted out. The dormer, you can stick your fist in between the dormer and the roof to get into the overhang, into the dormer. But yet it passed rental. Thanks to Mrs. Collegio and Robert Bacamino, and I don't know where Scott Stevens has been because he's supposed to be a council member at large, but he doesn't care about the south and only the north. Thank you, Mr. Bacamino, thank you, Mrs. Collegio, for going and correcting this and making these people, letting the city know about the violations here. The other one is Orchard. Mr. Lateef, you were talking about these water meters. You know, water meters don't mean a dang thing, especially the new ones. When you got a slum landlord in 2010 and it was $909 for a water bill, but you want me to comply to a water mandate for a new meter. When I called to set up the appointment to have the meter put in, not the secondary box, just the meter. I allowed the mechanical part to be put in, but not the controlled electronics. It is not FCC certified. I do not know what the frequency is, and I do not like it pinging more than 6 times in my house a day. I am not going to let Big Brother through my front door. Simple as that. I have already confirmed this with my attorney, who told me to call Field Services, set it up to get the new meter into my house. However, I do not have to allow the second device in because it was never mentioned in the paperwork. Yes, sir. Take a look. You'll find out I'm correct. And if you try to shut off my water, there is a federal mandate, whatever you're doing with that, Mr. St. Pierre, I think that's funny. There is a mandate by federal law that says somebody is terminally ill that requires water, and you can have Mr. Biernatt take a look at this, says you cannot turn their services off for any reason because you're jeopardizing their life. If I am a citizen of Warren, I do pay my taxes. Shut me off. My attorney begs you to do so. Okay? Now, I'm going to let you guys take a look at these paperwork, show you these pictures of these rental properties. Greg Polachek stood in the Orchard home not even 2 years ago and condemned it himself. Well, he didn't condemn it legally. He just said that the renter, the landlord was a slum landlord and that there was more conditions in this house that should be tore down, basically. But yet, so Mr. Lateef does $250 worth of work, I hear it, and they want to reopen it back up, which they were allowed to do. But the new meters is not going to stop these landlords with $909 water bills. So you're going to come after me, a homeowner that pays my bills, for this new meter, when you can't get these landlords to pay their water bills. Think about it. Isn't there an irony here? Quit picking on the homeowners and go after the real problem, which is the slum landlords. Start looking into it.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, we're done with audience council pending matters, so acknowledge council business, Mr. Secretary.
Next item is item 16A, selection of 3-person auditor committee.
You know, under the rules of procedure, I'm going to, maybe more history rather than written, I was going to appoint the committee, Keith Sadowski, Kelly Collegio, and Scott Stevens to serve as on the auditor committee. We had discussion at a previous council meeting. That's my appointment. I don't believe any motion is necessary. We'll go on to the next item, Mr. Secretary.
Next item is 16B. In regards to...
Wait, I'm sorry. As long as nobody has any objection, everybody, okay, thank you. Go on.
Excuse me, 16B, Kelly Collegio, reference milkweed, amendment to the city ordinance.
Yes, just community gardening is growing rapidly in the city. The mayor's, been very supportive of monarch way stations in the city, and the monarch butterfly's sole source of food for its larvae is milkweed, and milkweed happens to be on our list of noxious weeds in the city. We have it at City Hall, we have it at all these church gardens, and I would just, like to propose to council if we can have the city attorney look into drafting a way to get milkweed taken off our noxious weed list. That's it. Very short and sweet.
I'll make the motion to send this to the city attorney's
Support.
office for repealing milkweed from the city's noxious weed ordinance.
Motion by Stevens, support by Werner. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I guess I heard voices from everywhere. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item?
Next item is item 17, adjournment.
Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
The Wings won 3-0.